In the annals of American history, few events have sparked as much wonder, controversy, and enduring mystery as the World's Columbian Exposition of 1893. What was meant to commemorate the 400th anniversary of Christopher Columbus's arrival in the Americas became something far more extraordinary and deeply puzzling. The fair, held in Chicago from May to October 1893, drew over 27 million visitors who came to witness what many described as nothing short of miraculous, a gleaming white city that seemed to materialize from thin air in just 2 years. But beneath the surface of this celebrated triumph of human achievement lay questions that have haunted researchers, architects, and conspiracy theorists for more than a century. How could such an elaborate, technologically advanced complex have been constructed so quickly with the building methods and machinery available in the 1890s? Where did the extraordinary architectural knowledge come from? And why, after the fair's conclusion, was nearly everything systematically destroyed? The story begins in 1890 when Chicago, still rebuilding from the devastating fire of 1871, won the bid to host the World's Fair in fierce competition with New York, Washington, D.C., and St. Louis. The chosen site was a 686-acre tract of swampland and sand dunes along Lake Michigan in Jackson Park. What followed was a construction project of staggering ambition that would transform this desolate landscape into what visitors would call the most beautiful place on earth. The chief architect, Daniel Burnham, assembled a dream team of designers, including Frederick Law Olmsted, the landscape architect behind Central Park. Together, they envisioned a neoclassical wonderland of white buildings, grand boulevards, waterways, and gardens that would showcase American achievement and culture to the world. The centerpiece was to be the Court of Honor, a massive plaza surrounded by enormous buildings that seemed to have been lifted from ancient Rome or Greece. But here's where the mystery begins to unfold. The construction timeline was impossibly ambitious. Ground was broken in 1891, and by May 1893, a complete city had risen from the marshland. Not just buildings, but an entire infrastructure including electricity, running water, sewage systems, transportation networks, and elaborate landscaping. The main structures were enormous by any standard. The Manufacturers and Liberal Arts building covered 31 acres and stood 368 feet wide by 1,687 feet long, making it the largest building in the world at the time. Consider the logistics. In 1893, construction relied on horse-drawn equipment, manual labor, and rudimentary steam-powered machinery. There were no modern cranes, bulldozers, or power tools. Yet somehow, thousands of workers managed to move millions of tons of earth, erect buildings that dwarfed anything previously constructed, install revolutionary electrical systems designed by Nikola Tesla and George Westinghouse, and create elaborate water features and gardens that would have challenged modern landscape architects. The buildings themselves present perhaps the greatest puzzle. The official story maintains that most structures were built using a technique called staff, a mixture of plaster of Paris, cement, and fiber formed over wooden frames. This method was supposedly chosen because it was temporary, economical, and could be shaped into the elaborate decorative elements that adorned every building. But visitors consistently reported that the buildings appear to be made of solid white stone or marble. The surfaces were smooth, lustrous, and permanent-looking. Many structures featured intricate carved details, soaring domes, and architectural elements that would have required master craftsmen years to complete. Photographic evidence from the period adds to the mystery. Images show buildings of extraordinary sophistication and detail. The Palace of Fine Arts featured a massive dome rivaling that of the U.S. Capitol. The Transportation Building displayed an elaborate golden doorway called the Golden Door that was supposedly constructed in just months. The Electricity Building housed demonstrations of technology that wouldn't become widespread for another decade, including fully electric lighting systems, moving sidewalks, and early forms of air conditioning. But perhaps most puzzling was the level of architectural knowledge displayed. The buildings at the White City exhibited perfect proportions, advanced engineering principles, and decorative programs that seem to draw from architectural traditions spanning centuries and continents. There were elements of Roman classicism, Islamic geometric patterns, Byzantine domes, and Gothic details, all integrated seamlessly into a unified whole. This kind of architectural synthesis typically took civilizations centuries to develop, yet it appeared fully formed in the American Midwest in the space of 2 years. The technological achievements displayed at the fair were equally remarkable. Visitors could ride elevated electric trains, experience moving sidewalks, see early motion pictures, observe long-distance telephone demonstrations, and witness the first large-scale deployment of alternating current electricity. The Ferris wheel, designed by George Washington Gale Ferris Jr. as a response to the Eiffel Tower at the 1889 Paris Exposition, stood 264 feet tall and carried over 2,000 passengers at a time, an engineering feat that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible. Tesla's electrical innovations were particularly advanced. His alternating current system powered the entire fair with remarkable reliability, providing electricity for lighting, motors, and various demonstrations. The scale and sophistication of this electrical infrastructure was decades ahead of its time. Most American cities in 1893 still relied on gas lighting and horse-drawn transportation, yet the White City featured comprehensive electrification that wouldn't become standard elsewhere until the 1920s. The fair's organizational efficiency was equally mystifying. Despite drawing crowds that sometimes exceeded 750,000 visitors in a single day, the White City operated with remarkable smoothness. There were efficient transportation systems, adequate sanitation facilities, effective crowd control, and comprehensive communication networks. This level of organizational sophistication rivaled that of modern theme parks, yet was achieved with 1890s technology and management techniques. But perhaps the most intriguing mystery is what happened after the fair closed in October 1893. Despite the obvious value of the buildings and infrastructure, despite the millions of dollars invested in construction, and despite the clear demand for preservation from visitors and civic leaders, nearly everything was systematically demolished. The official explanation was that the buildings were always intended to be temporary, built with cheap materials that couldn't withstand Chicago's harsh winters. However, eyewitness accounts suggest a different story. Many visitors reported that the buildings felt solid and permanent. Demolition crews apparently required significant effort and heavy equipment to bring down structures that were supposedly made of temporary materials. Some workers reported finding evidence of advanced construction techniques hidden beneath the decorative surfaces, steel frameworks, sophisticated foundations, and building methods that didn't match the official specifications. The speed of demolition was as remarkable as the speed of construction. Within months of the fair's closing, most traces of the White City had vanished. A few structures survived, including the Palace of Fine Arts, later the Museum of Science and Industry, but the vast majority disappeared as if they had never existed. Even the detailed construction records and architectural plans seemed to vanish from archives, making it difficult for later researchers to verify exactly how the buildings were constructed. This systematic erasure has fueled decades of speculation about what the White City really was. Some researchers have suggested that the fair was actually built on the foundations of a much older city, possibly the ruins of a previous advanced civilization that had been buried and forgotten. This theory points to the remarkable speed of construction, the advanced architectural knowledge displayed, and the unusual decision to build on what was supposedly swampland. Archaeological evidence, while limited, has provided some tantalizing clues. Excavations in Jackson Park and surrounding areas have uncovered remnants of sophisticated building foundations that predate the official construction of the fair. Some of these foundations appear to be made of materials and using techniques that were supposedly unknown in 19th century America. There have also been discoveries of artifacts and building elements that don't match the official record of what was constructed for the fair. Another theory suggests that the fair was an elaborate demonstration project by a secret organization or advanced group that possessed technology and knowledge far beyond what was publicly available in 1893. Proponents of this theory point to the involvement of numerous mysterious figures in the fair's planning and construction, wealthy industrialists, foreign consultants, and technical experts whose backgrounds and qualifications were never fully explained. The financial aspects of the fair also raise questions. While the official budget was substantial for the time, many observers noted that the actual construction and operation costs seemed to exceed what was publicly acknowledged. Some researchers have suggested that the fair received significant funding from undisclosed sources, possibly foreign governments, secret societies, or private organizations with their own agendas. The influence of foreign architects and consultants was notably strong. Many of the key design elements were developed by individuals with extensive European training or mysterious backgrounds. Some had studied ancient architectural techniques, while others claimed expertise in construction methods that weren't taught in American schools. The integration of these diverse influences into a unified architectural program happened with surprising ease and sophistication. The fair's impact on American architecture was profound and lasting. Many of the design principles and urban planning concepts pioneered at the White City became standard elements of American civic design. The City Beautiful movement, which influenced urban planning for the next several decades, drew directly from the lessons of the Columbian Exposition. But this raises another puzzle. If the architectural knowledge displayed at the fair was genuinely innovative, why did it take so long for similar projects to be attempted elsewhere? Contemporary accounts of the fair consistently emphasize the sense of wonder and disbelief among visitors. People who attended described feeling as though they had stepped into another world or traveled to a different time. Many commented that the buildings and landscapes seemed too perfect, too harmonious, and too advanced to have been created by human hands. These weren't naive observers. Many were sophisticated travelers, architects, engineers, and cultural critics who had seen the best that Europe and America had to offer. The photographic record, while extensive, presents its own mysteries. Early photographs of the construction process show remarkably rapid progress, with massive buildings appearing to spring up almost overnight. The quality of construction visible in these images seems inconsistent with the temporary, inexpensive building methods that were supposedly used. Some photographs appear to show construction techniques and equipment that were more advanced than what was officially available. There are also discrepancies in the timeline that are difficult to explain. While the official groundbreaking ceremony took place in 1891, some evidence suggests that significant construction work was already underway by that time. Workers and observers reported seeing foundation work and site preparation that preceded the official start of construction by months or even years. This has led some researchers to wonder whether the fair was built on a much longer timeline than officially acknowledged. The labor force required for the construction presents another puzzle. Official records indicate that thousands of workers were employed on the project, but the coordination and skill level required for such rapid construction would have demanded an enormous number of highly trained craftsmen and specialists. In 1893, such workers were relatively rare and in high demand throughout the country. How Chicago managed to assemble and house such a workforce while keeping costs reasonable has never been adequately explained. The international participation in the fair also raises questions. While World's Fairs traditionally featured pavilions from various countries, the level of coordination and integration at the Columbian Exposition was remarkable. Foreign exhibits seemed to complement the overall design vision with unusual precision, and many international participants brought technologies and artifacts that weren't supposed to exist or be widely known at the time. Some of the most intriguing evidence comes from personal accounts and diaries of fair visitors and workers. These contemporary sources often describe experiences that don't match the official record. There are accounts of underground areas beneath the fair buildings, of strange technologies being demonstrated in restricted areas, and of mysterious figures who seem to possess knowledge and authority that wasn't reflected in the official organizational charts. The electrical installations at the fair deserve special attention. While Tesla's alternating current system was indeed revolutionary, the scale and sophistication of its implementation at the fair exceeded what was achieved elsewhere for many years. The electrical infrastructure included not just lighting and power, but sophisticated control systems, communication networks, and safety features that wouldn't become standard until decades later. Some visitors reported seeing electrical devices and applications that weren't publicly known until much later. The water features and landscaping of the fair were equally remarkable. The complex system of lagoons, canals, and fountains was created in an area that was supposedly swampland just 2 years earlier. The precision of the water management system, the speed with which mature landscaping was established, and the integration of water features with the architectural program all suggest a level of planning and engineering expertise that was rare in the 1890s. Weather records from the construction period add another layer to the mystery. Chicago experienced several harsh winters during the construction phase, yet work seemed to proceed with remarkable consistency. Building with the materials and methods that were supposedly used should have been severely hampered by cold weather, yet photographs and accounts suggest continuous progress regardless of conditions. The acoustic design of the fair buildings was also remarkably sophisticated. Many visitors commented on the excellent sound quality in the various exhibition halls and performance spaces. This level of acoustic engineering required advanced understanding of sound propagation and architectural acoustics that wasn't widely available in 1893. The integration of acoustic considerations with the visual design program suggests involvement of experts with specialized knowledge. Security and crowd control of the fair operated with efficiency that was unusual for the time. Despite the massive crowds and the potential for disorder, the fair maintained excellent safety and security throughout its run. This required coordination and communication systems that were advanced for the 1890s, as well as organizational techniques that wouldn't become standard in mass entertainment until much later. The international visitors to the fair included numerous dignitaries, experts, and observers who were qualified to assess what they were seeing. Many of these individuals published accounts of their experiences, and their observations consistently emphasized the extraordinary nature of what had been achieved. These weren't casual tourists, but rather architects, engineers, urban planners, and government officials who understood the technical challenges involved in such a project. The timing of the fair's demolition is particularly suspicious when examined in context. The economic depression that began in 1893 would seem to argue for preserving valuable buildings and infrastructure, yet the decision to demolish was made quickly and carried out systematically. The official explanation that the buildings couldn't survive winter weather seems inadequate when compared to the obvious effort and expense required for demolition. Some researchers have suggested that the real mystery lies not in how the fair was built, but in why it was built. The official motivation of celebrating Columbus's voyage and showcasing American achievement seems insufficient to explain the enormous investment and extraordinary effort involved. Alternative theories suggest that the fair served multiple purposes, perhaps as a demonstration project, a testing ground for new technologies, or a cover for other activities that required large-scale construction and international cooperation. The influence of the fair on subsequent American architecture and urban planning was profound, but it also seems to have represented a peak that wasn't immediately sustained. Many of the architectural and engineering innovations displayed at the fair didn't appear elsewhere until decades later, suggesting that the knowledge and capability demonstrated in Chicago wasn't widely available or transferable at the time. The fair's impact on popular culture was equally significant. The success of the White City influenced everything from urban planning to entertainment design, from landscape architecture to electrical engineering. But this cultural impact seems disproportionate to what should have been possible with a temporary exhibition built with 1890s technology and resources. Modern analysis of surviving element from the fair has provided some additional clues, but also more mysteries. The Museum of Science and Industry, the only major building to survive, has been extensively renovated over the years, making it difficult to determine original construction methods. However, some structural elements that have been exposed during renovation works suggest building techniques that were more sophisticated than the official record indicates. Recent archaeological investigations in Jackson Park have uncovered foundation elements and infrastructure remnants that don't fully match the official construction records. Some of these discoveries suggest that the site had more extensive preparation and foundation work than was publicly acknowledged. There are also indications that some foundation work may have preceded the official construction timeline. The economic impact of the fair was enormous, drawing visitors from around the world and generating revenue that helped establish Chicago as a major cultural and commercial center. But the long-term economic effects seem disproportionate to what should have been achievable with a temporary exhibition. The fair's influence on Chicago's development suggests that it provided benefits and capabilities that extended far beyond its official purpose. Contemporary newspaper coverage of the fair provides another interesting perspective on the mystery. While most coverage was enthusiastic and supportive, there are occasional hints of confusion or concern about various aspects of the project. Some reporters noted discrepancies between official explanations and what they observed directly. Others commented on the unusual speed and efficiency of construction and operation. The international press coverage was similarly enthusiastic but occasionally puzzled. European observers, who were familiar with major construction projects and international exhibitions, consistently expressed amazement at what had been achieved in Chicago. Many noted that the scale and sophistication of the fair exceeded what had been accomplished at previous international exhibitions in older, more established cities. The technological demonstrations at the fair included innovations that weren't supposed to be publicly available for years or even decades. While some of these can be explained as experimental prototypes or special demonstrations, the breadth and sophistication of the technology displayed suggests access to knowledge and resources that weren't widely available in 1893. The transportation systems within the fair were remarkably advanced. The elevated railway system, moving sidewalks, and boat transportation network operated with efficiency and reliability that was unusual for experimental systems. The integration of these various transportation modes into a unified network demonstrated planning and engineering capabilities that were rare in the 1890s. The waste management and sanitation systems at the fair were also remarkably sophisticated. Despite the enormous crowds and the potential for public health problems, the fair maintained excellent sanitary conditions throughout its run. This required understanding of public health principles and engineering capabilities that were advanced for the time. The communication systems at the fair included telephone networks, telegraph systems, and coordination mechanisms that enabled efficient operation despite the massive scale and complexity of the event. The reliability and sophistication of these communication systems exceeded what was available in most American cities at the time. As we examine all the evidence, the impossible construction timeline, the advanced architectural knowledge, the sophisticated technology, the systematic demolition, and the mysterious gaps in official records, a pattern emerges that challenges our understanding of what was officially possible in 1893. Whether the explanation involves lost construction techniques, suppressed technologies, hidden funding sources, or something even more extraordinary, the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition remains one of the most intriguing mysteries in American history. The White City stood for just 6 months, but its impact reverberates through history. It demonstrated possibilities that seemed to transcend the limitations of its time, showcased technologies that wouldn't become widespread for decades, and achieved architectural integration that has rarely been equaled since. Perhaps most mysteriously, it did all of this and then vanished almost completely, leaving behind only fragments, photographs, and persistent questions about how such an extraordinary achievement was possible. The mystery of the 1893 Chicago World's Fair continues to inspire researchers, architects, and historians more than a century later. Each new investigation seems to reveal additional puzzles rather than definitive answers. The official story, while documented, seems inadequate to explain what contemporary observers witnessed and what photographic evidence suggests was achieved. In our modern age of advanced construction technology, computer-aided design, and sophisticated project management, the achievements of the 1893 fair seem even more remarkable. Current architects and engineers who study the fair often express amazement at what was supposedly accomplished with 19th century tools and techniques. Some have suggested that replicating the fair today, even with modern technology, would be a significant challenge. The legacy of the White City extends far beyond its brief existence. It influenced generations of architects, urban planners, and designers. It demonstrated the power of comprehensive design vision and showed that large-scale public works could achieve both functional efficiency and aesthetic beauty. But it also established a standard that has rarely been matched, even with modern resources and technology. The question remains, if human beings in 1893 possessed the knowledge, resources, and capabilities necessary to create the White City, why do those same capabilities seem so extraordinary and difficult to replicate today? The answer to this question may hold the key to understanding not just the mystery of the 1893 fair, but also the broader question of what human civilization is truly capable of achieving when knowledge, resources, and vision align in extraordinary ways. The 1893 World's Columbian Exposition stands as a testament to human potential and a reminder that history may hold more mysteries than we commonly acknowledge. Whether its secrets lie in forgotten construction techniques, suppressed technologies, or something beyond our current understanding, the White City continues to challenge our assumptions about the past and inspire our vision of what might be possible in the future. The human cost of this extraordinary achievement also presents puzzling aspects that deserve examination. Despite the massive scale of the construction project and the dangerous working conditions typical of 19th century building sites, the official casualty records for the fair's construction are remarkably low. This is particularly surprising given the experimental nature of many construction techniques, the pressure of tight deadlines, and the sheer number of workers involved. Modern construction projects with similar scope and timeline typically experience significant safety challenges, even with advanced safety equipment and regulations. The workforce itself presents another layer of mystery. While official records indicate the employment of thousands of workers, the actual organizational structure and management hierarchy remains unclear. Many skilled craftsmen appear to work on the project without leaving clear records of their previous experience or subsequent employment. Some observers noted that certain work crews seem to possess specialized knowledge and techniques that weren't commonly taught in American trade schools or apprentice programs of the time. The integration of artistic elements throughout the White City was particularly remarkable. The buildings featured elaborate sculptural programs, decorative friezes, and artistic details that would typically require years to plan and execute. Yet these artistic elements appeared to be conceived and implemented as integral parts of the overall design from the beginning, suggesting a level of artistic planning and coordination that was unusual for the period. The artists and sculptors involved in these programs often worked with extraordinary speed and precision, producing works that rivaled the best examples of classical and contemporary art. The horticultural achievements at the fair were equally extraordinary. The transformation of the Jackson Park site included not just the construction of buildings and infrastructure, but the creation of elaborate gardens, landscaped areas, and botanical displays that suggested years of planning and cultivation. Many of the plant specimens and landscape features appear to be fully mature despite the short construction timeline. The wooded island, in particular, featured what appeared to be an established ecosystem complete with mature trees and sophisticated landscape design. Contemporary accounts describe the gardens and landscaping as being among the most beautiful and sophisticated ever created in America. Visitors who were familiar with the great gardens of Europe consistently commented that the landscaping at the White City rivaled or exceeded what they had seen in much older and more established locations. The integration of water features, walking paths, plant selections, and architectural elements demonstrated a level of landscape architecture expertise that was rare in 1890s America. The engineering challenges overcome during construction were formidable and remain impressive even by modern standards. The site's transformation from swampland to stable building foundation required massive earth-moving operations, sophisticated drainage systems, and innovative foundation techniques. The speed with which this environmental engineering was accomplished suggests capabilities and knowledge that exceeded what was publicly available at the time. The structural engineering of the major buildings was particularly advanced. The Manufacturers and Liberal Arts Building, with its enormous span and minimal internal support structure, required engineering calculations and construction techniques that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible with 1890s materials and methods. The building's roof system covered an area larger than some entire city centers, yet it was completed without the structural failures or engineering problems that typically plague innovative large-scale construction projects. The Palace of Fine Arts, which survived long enough to become the Museum of Science and Industry, provides the best remaining evidence of the construction techniques used at the fair. Detailed examination of this building over the decades has revealed sophisticated structural systems, advanced foundation work, and building materials that don't entirely match the official specifications for temporary staff construction. Some structural elements suggest engineering approaches that were more advanced than standard practice for the 1890s. The electrical systems designed by Tesla and implemented throughout the fair represented a quantum leap in power distribution and control technology. The reliability and sophistication of these systems exceeded what was achieved in most American cities for many years afterward. The electrical installations included not just basic lighting and power, but sophisticated control systems, safety mechanisms, and distribution networks that demonstrated advanced understanding of electrical engineering principles. The scale of electrical power required for the fair was enormous. The generators, transformers, and distribution systems had to be designed, manufactured, and installed within the compressed construction timeline, while maintaining reliability standards that were essential for public safety. The coordination between Tesla's AC system and the various electrical demands of the fair required planning and execution capabilities that were rare in the electrical engineering field of the 1890s. Some of the electrical demonstrations at the fair included technologies that wouldn't become commercially available for decades. Visitors reported seeing early forms of electric motors, lighting control systems, and even primitive electronic communication devices that seemed to anticipate technologies of the early 20th century. The concentration of electrical innovation at the fair suggests access to research and development capabilities that exceeded what was publicly known to be available. The water management systems at the fair were remarkably sophisticated, involving not just decorative water features, but comprehensive systems for water supply, waste management, and environmental control. The creation of lagoons, canals, and fountains in an area that had been swampland required advanced understanding of hydrology, water treatment, and environmental engineering. The systems operated reliably throughout the fair despite the enormous demands placed on them by millions of visitors. The transportation infrastructure within the fairgrounds was comprehensive and efficient. The elevated railway system, known as the intramural railway, operated with reliability that was unusual for experimental transportation systems. The integration of boat transportation on the lagoons, moving sidewalks in key areas, and conventional walkways created a transportation network that handled massive crowds with remarkable efficiency. The construction and operation of the Ferris wheel represents perhaps the single most impressive engineering achievement of the fair. This enormous structure, designed and built specifically for the exposition, required innovative engineering solutions that had never been attempted before. The wheel's construction involved precision manufacturing, advanced metallurgy, and sophisticated mechanical engineering that pushed the boundaries of what was possible with 1890s technology. The safety record of the Ferris wheel was remarkably good, despite its experimental nature and enormous scale. The mechanical systems operated reliably throughout the fair, carrying millions of passengers without serious incident. This level of reliability in an experimental engineering project suggests design and construction capabilities that exceeded normal standards for the period. The international pavilions at the fair demonstrated remarkable coordination and planning that would be challenging even with modern communication and transportation systems. Countries from around the world constructed elaborate displays and buildings that integrated seamlessly with the overall design vision of the White City. The logistics of coordinating international participation on such a scale within the compressed timeline of the fair's planning and construction represents a significant organizational achievement. Some of the international exhibits included technologies and artifacts that weren't supposed to be available or widely known at the time. The Japanese pavilion, for example, demonstrated construction techniques and architectural principles that influenced American architecture for decades afterward. The German exhibits included advanced manufacturing technologies and scientific instruments that wouldn't become common in America until much later. The cultural impact of the fair extended far beyond its official closing date. The architectural styles, urban planning concepts, and technological innovations demonstrated that the White City influenced American development for decades. The City Beautiful movement, which shaped urban planning in numerous American cities, drew directly from the lessons and inspiration of the Columbian Exposition. But this cultural influence seems disproportionate to what should have been achievable with a 6-month temporary exhibition. The educational impact of the fair was equally significant. The demonstrations of advanced technology, the exhibits of scientific and cultural achievements, and the integration of educational programs throughout the exposition influenced American approaches to public education and cultural institutions. Many of the museums, universities, and cultural institutions established in the wake of the fair drew inspiration from what had been demonstrated in Chicago. The economic effects of the fair rippled through American society for years afterward. The success of the exposition helped establish Chicago as a major cultural and commercial center, but it also demonstrated the economic potential of large-scale cultural and educational events. The model of the World's Fair as both educational exhibit and economic engine influenced similar projects for decades. The disappearance of construction records and architectural plans remains one of the most puzzling aspects of the entire affair. For a project of such significance and scale, the preservation of detailed documentation would normally be considered essential for historical and educational purposes. The systematic removal or loss of these records makes it difficult for modern researchers to verify exactly how the buildings were constructed and what techniques were actually employed. Some researchers have suggested that the missing documentation was deliberately removed to conceal construction methods or technologies that were considered proprietary or sensitive. Others have theorized that the records were lost accidentally in the chaos following the fair's closure and the onset of economic depression. However, the systematic nature of the documentation gaps suggests that their disappearance may not have been entirely accidental. The few surviving architectural drawings and construction photographs raise as many questions as they answer. Some images show construction techniques that appear more advanced than the tools and methods that were supposedly available. Others suggest that certain buildings may have been constructed using methods that differed significantly from the official specifications for temporary staff construction. The social impact of the fair on American society was profound and lasting. The White City provided millions of Americans with their first exposure to advanced technology, international culture, and sophisticated urban design. For many visitors, the fair represented a vision of what American cities and society could become with proper planning and resources. This social vision influenced American culture and politics for decades. The fair also provided a platform for social and cultural movements that were emerging in the 1890s. Women's rights advocates, educational reformers, and social progressives all used the fair as an opportunity to promote their causes and demonstrate their achievements. The integration of these social movements into the fair's program suggests a level of cultural sophistication and progressive thinking that was advanced for the time. The religious and spiritual impact of the fair was equally significant. The Parliament of Religions, held in conjunction with the exposition, brought together religious leaders from around the world in an unprecedented display of interfaith dialogue and cooperation. This religious conference influenced American spiritual and intellectual life for decades, introducing Eastern religious concepts and practices to Western audiences for the first time. The scientific demonstrations at the fair included innovations and discoveries that wouldn't become widely known or accepted for years afterward. Some exhibits featured early forms of wireless communication, advanced metallurgy, and scientific instruments that anticipated developments of the early 20th century. The concentration of scientific innovation at the fair suggests access to research and development capabilities that exceeded what was publicly available. The medical and health innovations demonstrated at the fair were particularly advanced. The exposition featured exhibits on public health, medical technology, and scientific approaches to health and wellness that were ahead of their time. Some of these medical innovations wouldn't become standard practice for decades, yet they were demonstrated reliably and effectively throughout the fair. The communication systems that coordinated the fair's daily operations were remarkably sophisticated for the 1890s. The ability to manage crowds of hundreds of thousands of visitors, coordinate complex logistics, and maintain safety and security required communication and organizational capabilities that exceeded what was available in most American institutions at the time. The weather monitoring and environmental control systems at the fair demonstrated advanced understanding of meteorology and environmental science. The ability to predict and manage weather-related challenges, maintain comfortable conditions in large buildings, and coordinate outdoor events with weather patterns require knowledge and capabilities that were advanced for the period. The preservation of some artifacts and architectural elements from the fair has provided tantalizing clues about construction methods and materials used in the original buildings. Analysis of these surviving elements has revealed sophisticated metallurgy, advanced concrete formulations, and building materials that don't entirely match the official specifications for temporary construction. Recent technological analysis using modern techniques has revealed additional mysteries in the surviving artifacts. Some materials show characteristics that suggest manufacturing processes or treatment techniques that weren't supposed to be available in the 1890s. Other artifacts demonstrate precision and quality control that exceeded what was standard for the period. The influence of the fair on subsequent American architecture and engineering cannot be overstated. Many of the design principles, construction techniques, and urban planning concepts pioneered at the White City became standard elements of American civic and commercial architecture. However, the sophistication and integration of these innovations at the fair seemed to anticipate developments that wouldn't become widespread until decades later. The mystery deepens when we consider that many of the architectural and engineering innovations demonstrated at the fair weren't immediately replicated elsewhere. If the knowledge and capability existed to create the White City in 1893, why did it take so long for similar projects to be attempted in other American cities? This suggests that the resources, knowledge, or techniques employed at the fair may not have been widely available or easily transferable. The story of the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition continues to challenge our understanding of what was possible in the 19th century. Each new examination of the evidence reveals additional puzzles and raises new questions about the true nature of this extraordinary achievement. The mystery endures, waiting for new researchers, new technologies, and new perspectives to unlock its secrets and reveal the truth behind one of America's most extraordinary and enigmatic achievements. The aftermath of the fair's closure in October 1893 presents perhaps the most disturbing aspects of the entire mystery. The systematic destruction that followed was swift, thorough, and seemingly wasteful of valuable resources and infrastructure. Within months of the fair's closing, buildings that had cost millions of dollars to construct were being demolished with an urgency that suggested something beyond simple economic necessity. The demolition process itself was remarkable for its efficiency and completeness. Contemporary accounts describe crews working around the clock to dismantle structures that had taken years to build. The speed and thoroughness of this destruction was particularly puzzling given the economic depression that gripped the nation in 1893. During times of economic hardship, valuable buildings and materials would typically be preserved, repurposed, or sold rather than destroyed. Eyewitness accounts of the demolition process reveal disturbing details. Workers reported that many buildings required far more effort to demolish than would be expected from structures built with temporary materials. Some crews described finding steel frameworks, concrete foundations, and sophisticated structural systems hidden beneath the decorative surfaces. These discoveries contradicted the official explanation that the buildings were constructed with cheap, temporary materials. The systematic nature of the destruction extended beyond the buildings themselves. Elaborate gardens and landscaping that had taken years to mature were bulldozed and removed. Water features that had required sophisticated engineering were filled in and obliterated. Even decorative elements and artistic works were systematically destroyed rather than preserved for future use or historical study. Perhaps most troubling was the apparent destruction of records and documentation related to the fair's construction and operation. Architectural plans, construction specifications, financial records, and organizational documents that should have been preserved for historical purposes seemed to disappear during the same period as the physical destruction. This simultaneous loss of both physical evidence and documentary evidence suggests a coordinated effort to eliminate traces of how the fair was actually constructed. The economic justification for this massive destruction never made complete sense. Even if the buildings were truly temporary and unsuitable for long-term use, the valuable materials, fixtures, and infrastructure components should have been salvaged and resold. The systematic destruction of valuable resources during an economic depression seems to contradict basic economic logic and raises questions about the true motivations behind the demolition. Some researchers have suggested that the destruction was motivated by the need to conceal evidence of construction techniques or technologies that were considered proprietary or sensitive. If the fair had been built using advanced methods that weren't widely known, the systematic destruction of evidence would make sense as a way to prevent competitors or foreign interests from studying and replicating these techniques. Others have theorized that the destruction was necessary to conceal the true origins of the fair's buildings and infrastructure. If the White City had been built on foundations or using materials that predated the official construction timeline, the systematic elimination of evidence would be necessary to maintain the official narrative about the fair's creation. The few structures that survived the systematic destruction provide tantalizing clues about what was actually built at the fair. The Palace of Fine Arts, which became the Museum of Science and Industry, has undergone numerous renovations and modifications over the years. However, careful examination of original structural elements has revealed construction techniques and materials that don't entirely match the official specifications for temporary buildings. Archaeological investigations in Jackson Park have uncovered foundation remnants and infrastructure elements that suggest more extensive and sophisticated construction than the official records indicate. Some of these archaeological discoveries include materials and construction techniques that were supposedly unknown or unavailable in 1890s America. The pattern of preservation and destruction also raises questions. Certain buildings and areas were preserved while others were systematically destroyed, but the logic behind these decisions isn't clear from the official records. Some structures that would have had obvious value for permanent use were destroyed, while others with less apparent utility were preserved. The role of fire in the destruction of many fair buildings has also been questioned. While fires were common in 19th century buildings, the pattern of fires that affected fair buildings seems suspicious. Many fires occurred at convenient times for demolition schedules and seem to spread in ways that maximize destruction while minimizing the possibility of salvage. Contemporary newspaper coverage of the destruction reveals some interesting details that aren't included in official records. Some reporters noted the unusual efficiency of the demolition crews and the systematic nature of the destruction process. Others commented on the apparent waste of valuable materials and the missed opportunities for preservation and reuse. The international reaction to the destruction of the White City was one of bewilderment and disappointment. European observers who had been impressed by the fair's achievements couldn't understand why such remarkable buildings and infrastructure would be systematically destroyed rather than preserved. This international perspective suggests that the destruction wasn't simply a matter of American practical considerations. The timing of the destruction also coincided with other significant events in American history. The economic depression of 1893, the closing of the frontier, and various social and political upheavals all occurred during the same period as the fair's destruction. Some researchers have suggested that the elimination of the White City was part of a broader effort to control or redirect American cultural and social development. The psychological impact of the destruction on those who had worked on or visited the fair was significant. Many people who had been involved in the fair's creation or operation expressed dismay and confusion about the systematic destruction of what they considered one of America's greatest achievements. The loss of the White City seemed to represent the loss of a vision of what American civilization could achieve. The influence of foreign interests in both the construction and destruction of the fair remains a subject of speculation. While international participation was officially limited to exhibits and displays, some researchers have suggested that foreign governments or organizations may have had greater involvement in the fair's planning, construction, and eventual destruction. The financial aspects of the destruction also raise questions. The cost of systematic demolition would have been substantial, especially during an economic depression. The sources of funding for this destruction aren't clearly documented in surviving records, leading to speculation about who was willing to pay for such thorough elimination of the fair's remains. The contrast between the preservation efforts for other significant buildings of the era and the systematic destruction of the fair buildings is stark. During the same period, there were significant efforts to preserve and restore important architectural and historical sites throughout America. The decision to destroy rather than preserve the White City seems inconsistent with broader cultural trends of the time. The technological evidence destroyed, along with the buildings, may have been the most significant loss. The fair had showcased numerous innovations in engineering, architecture, and technology that could have advanced American industrial development. The systematic destruction of this technological heritage represents a loss that may have set back American development in various fields. The impact on Chicago's development was also significant. The destruction of the fair eliminated what could have been a permanent cultural and educational center that would have enhanced Chicago's position as a major American city. The loss of this opportunity seems particularly puzzling given Chicago's ambitions for cultural and economic leadership. The environmental impact of the destruction was considerable. The systematic demolition and removal of buildings, landscaping, and infrastructure represented a massive waste of resources and energy. During a period when conservation and efficiency were becoming increasingly important, the destruction of the White City seems inconsistent with emerging environmental awareness. The social and cultural implications of the destruction extended far beyond Chicago. The White City had represented a vision of what American civilization could achieve through planning, cooperation, and technological innovation. The systematic destruction of this vision may have had lasting effects on American culture and society that are still not fully understood. The educational opportunities lost through the destruction were enormous. The fair had demonstrated advanced techniques in numerous fields that could have been studied and developed further. The elimination of these educational resources may have delayed American progress in architecture, engineering, urban planning, and other fields for decades. The artistic and cultural losses were equally significant. The fair had brought together artists, architects, and designers from around the world to create an integrated cultural experience that was unprecedented in American history. The systematic destruction of this artistic achievement represents a cultural loss that cannot be measured or recovered. The scientific and technological innovations demonstrated at the fair were also lost in the destruction. Many of the experimental technologies and research projects showcased at the fair could have been developed further if the facilities and equipment had been preserved. The systematic elimination of these resources may have set back American scientific and technological development in ways that are still not fully understood. The international implications of the destruction were also significant. The White City had established America as a leader in architecture, technology, and cultural achievement on the world stage. The systematic destruction of this achievement may have damaged America's international reputation and missed opportunities for continued international cooperation and development. The mystery deepens when we consider the long-term effects of the fair's destruction on American architecture and urban planning. While the fair initially inspired the City Beautiful movement and influenced urban development for decades, the destruction of the physical evidence may have limited the full development of these architectural and planning innovations. The question of what might have been accomplished if the White City had been preserved remains one of the most intriguing aspects of the entire mystery. If the buildings, infrastructure, and technological innovations have been maintained and developed further, how might American civilization have evolved differently? The systematic destruction of the fair eliminated the possibility of answering this question. The pattern of secrecy and concealment that surrounded both the construction and destruction of the fair suggests that there were aspects of the project that were never intended to be fully understood by the public. The systematic elimination of evidence makes it difficult to determine exactly what those hidden aspects might have been, but their existence seems undeniable. Recent attempts to reconstruct the history of the fair using modern research techniques have been hampered by the systematic destruction of evidence that occurred more than a century ago. Digital archaeology, architectural analysis, and historical research have all been limited by the thoroughness of the original concealment efforts. The legacy of the mystery continues to influence how we understand American history and the possibilities of human achievement. The 1893 World's Columbian Exposition represents either the greatest triumph of 19th century American civilization or evidence of capabilities and knowledge that challenge our understanding of what was possible during that period. The enduring fascination with the fair reflects a broader human need to understand our own potential and limitations. If human beings in 1893 could create something as extraordinary as the White City, what does that say about what we might be capable of achieving today? The mystery of the fair challenges us to reconsider our assumptions about progress, technology, and human potential. The systematic destruction of the evidence also raises questions about power, knowledge, and control in American society. Who had the authority and resources to eliminate such a massive achievement? What interests were served by concealing the methods and techniques used in the fair's construction? These questions extend far beyond the specific mystery of the 1893 fair to broader questions about how knowledge and capability are controlled and distributed in society. The continuing research into the fair's mysteries has taken on new dimensions with the development of modern analytical techniques. Ground-penetrating radar, chemical analysis of surviving materials, and digital reconstruction of missing architectural elements have all provided new insights into what was actually built at the fair. However, these modern techniques have also revealed additional mysteries that weren't apparent to earlier researchers. The oral history and family traditions passed down from people who worked on or visited the fair have preserved some information that wasn't included in official records. These unofficial accounts often describe experiences and observations that contradict the official narrative about the fair's construction and operation. While oral history can be unreliable, the consistency of certain accounts across different families and communities suggests that some unofficial information may be accurate. The international connections revealed through modern research have also expanded our understanding of the fair's true scope and complexity. Documents discovered in foreign archives have revealed levels of international cooperation and coordination that weren't apparent from American sources alone. These international connections suggest that the fair may have been part of larger global developments that weren't fully understood at the time. The technological analysis of surviving artifacts continues to reveal surprises about the materials and methods used in the fair's construction. Advanced metallurgy, sophisticated chemical formulations, and precision manufacturing techniques have all been discovered in materials that were supposedly produced using 1890s technology. These discoveries suggest that the technological capabilities available for the fair's construction may have exceeded what was publicly known or officially acknowledged. The architectural analysis of surviving buildings and foundation remnants has revealed construction techniques that were supposedly unknown or unavailable in 1890s America. These techniques include advanced foundation systems, sophisticated structural engineering, and building methods that wouldn't become standard practice until decades later. The question of how such advanced knowledge and capability could have existed in 1893 America without leaving more extensive historical traces remains central to the mystery. If the knowledge existed, where did it come from? If it didn't exist, how do we explain what was actually achieved at the fair? The possibility that the fair represented a unique convergence of knowledge, resources, and circumstances that hasn't been replicated since adds another dimension to the mystery. Perhaps the combination of factors that made the White City possible was so unusual that it couldn't be sustained or repeated, even with modern technology and resources. The enduring mystery of the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition continues to challenge researchers, historians, and anyone interested in understanding the true potential of human achievement. More than 130 years after its brief existence, the White City remains one of the most puzzling and inspiring examples of what might be possible when vision, resources, and capability align in extraordinary ways. The truth behind its creation and destruction may never be fully known, but the questions it raises about human potential and the nature of progress continue to resonate through history.